Welcome to the show, Dark Valiants. I know I don't usually pop out until the end, but I've got something quite special to share this time. The Mortis Maledictum novel is finally available. Yes, that means every story you've heard here and all the ones coming up are out on Amazon to read. So if you want to read along or read ahead, the link is down in the show notes. And since the sole most important thing in getting these defiling gremlins to help us grow our dark family is reviews, we ask that you please consider throwing out a few words to help spread the madness. Thank you.
We find ourselves here, at the beginning. Another tale, another chapter. Titus and Cassius climbed down the stone steps, away from the center of Comaldika. While most of the people came to the area to lounge at the magnificent park, or watch exotic birds nesting in the trees, these two were on a very different mission. Diana had appeared before them only a day before. She'd stepped off her flying chariot with her elaborate bow in her hand and golden arrows on her back. "You two, stop there," she said, and they froze. "Cassius and Titus, come to my side." She knew their names and had clearly been looking for them. They approached her, trepidation causing their steps to falter. "Who are you?" Titus asked, already knowing the answer. "I am Diana, and I have work for you." The pair looked around the small clearing in the gardens outside of Alexandria. There were no others around. The goddess of the hunt had chosen her timing well. "What can we humble men do for you?" Cassius asked. Diana explained how followers of the Egyptian goddess Bastet had insulted her chosen, and although Diana had dealt with the perpetrators immediately, the slight needed rectification from the Egyptian pantheon. She gave them directions to a secret temple to Bastet within the Comaldika in Alexandria. That was why, while everyone else lounged in the soft spring sunlight filtering through the trees, Titus and Cassius slipped away down the brick steps to a hidden door. They moved under an archway and down under another short flight of stairs. Here the mosaics and artistry ended, and statues and hieroglyphs took their place. Diana had given them simple instructions. Bastet's followers had insulted the huntress, and they would smash every idol within the temple in recompense. The stone statues sat atop shoulder-high Greek pillars. Titus threw caution to the wind. His goddess, Diana, had given him explicit instructions, and by all others in the pantheon, he would do as she said. He pushed the first pillar over, and the stone panther sitting atop it fell and struck the floor. It broke into 3 pieces, and the pair of defilers stood completely still to listen. There were no threats appearing from the archway, and none of Bastet's priestesses were in the temple. Now emboldened, Cassius pushed another pillar over into a third. They both fell away and crashed into the base of one wall, defacing the hieroglyphs carved there. Both of the men were grinning now, wicked smiles to match their violent deeds. Their eyes shone with righteousness, but out of their depth, and their knowledge of the machinations of gods was sorely lacking. A female lion padded softly into the temple from an unseen entrance. It stalked up behind the 2 Romans who at that moment were busy taking sharp metal rods to the delicately carved walls of the room. Leaping at Cassius from behind, the monstrous beast let out not a whisper of sound. Mid-flight the lion disappeared, and it shifted to a tall, naked feminine form with the head of a cat. Bastet came to defend her temple. She landed on Cassius's back and drove him to the floor. She slashed her clawed hands across the tendons in the back of his legs, and he cried out. It was only warning Titus would get, and it wasn't enough. Bastet conjured a woven gold thread out of the air and flicked it around Titus's neck. She pulled hard on it, and the man flew backward, choking and sputtering. He landed beside his friend, and, within seconds, Bastet had the pair bound together and dragged them away to the hidden entrance where she had merged. Their lives were forfeit, but the returned insult would not be so easily revenged. Bastet was a feline, and like the jaguar, the tiger, the panther, and the lion, she liked to play with her food. A silent jackal padded across the lawn of the Comaldika garden. The moon was high in a cloudless night, and the light shone reflected against its black eyes. It made its way down the same brick steps the two defilers had 3 weeks ago. Anubis entered the hidden temple of Bastet and shifted his form to that of a tall man. His dark skin still gleamed with the sweat of exertion from his travels. Osiris had deigned to make him the ambassador to the Olympians. "They want the men's souls back," Anubis called into the candlelit interior. He rounded the corner and spotted Bastet lounging at the foot of her shrine. She hissed at him and crossed his arms over his chest. Anubis's long snout looked down at the feline. She was chewing on a finger of a dismembered hand. "They are mine to toy with as I wish," she replied. "I have walked from Cairo to Mount Olympus, and now to here. The souls must go to their eternity. You cannot keep them forever." "They are mine," Bastet repeated. "They smashed my statues and destroyed my temple." Anubis crouched down to meet Bastet's eyes. He looked at her, carefully measuring her resolve. After a time, he sighed. "A slight against one of us is a slight against all of us. I've negotiated with the Roman gods. They kept your priestess's soul, who Diana slew. You can keep the souls of these men. Diana does not agree, but Jupiter doesn't wish war with us." "What do they want instead, Impu?" she asked, using a truly ancient name Anubis hadn't used in centuries. The comment raised Anubis's hackles. It wasn't the name. He knew what he had to say, and knew equally how Bastet would take it. "The Olympians say we have become too powerful. They want us to take the Defiler's power." Bastet jumped up onto the shrine, shifting into a small black cat and hissing again. "I will not hold the bastion. They cannot force me. Their bodies are mine to play with, but the Romans must take their souls. Diana gave them some of her power. Did they tell you that?" Anubis took a step back and held his hands up in deference. "They admitted nothing, but I suspected that was the case," he said, and sighed. "How close are you to the top?" "Osiris and Amun still hold the majority, but I must diminish if I am to avoid representing us for the next mantle," Bastet said. Anubis' shoulders slumped. "Amun is no longer as powerful as he was. He is formed with Ra, and gave the other much of his power. I am second. It was why Osiris sent me to Olympus. Many of their worshippers thought Amun-Ra was the prime deity. This granted the god nearly unsurpassed power. But as the prime responsibilities pushed Amun to the limits of his power, Ra would have ceased despite constant worship if he had not merged with Amun. Together, they used their power to hold the land together, raise the sun, and bring the rains to the wet seasons. It may not be the way other pantheons worked, but it was the way Egypt had always functioned. I am sorry, but I cannot kill the men, Bastet said. I cannot take their power or risk rivaling Osiris. Diana is cunning, and she's turned your provocation back on us. Anubis paused here and shifted back to a jackal. He sniffed the air, and then softly padded off towards the temple's back room, where Bastet kept her prisoners. His form did not prevent him from communicating with Bastet. Indeed, his actions told her volumes. He would kill Titus and Cassius, therefore taking Diana's power, and become the first among the Egyptian pantheon. It is a risk, he told her, but I must weigh their hearts and send them onwards. If that means I must also fell them myself, so be it. The screams echoed from the temple, but were drowned out by the primal howl of a hunting jackal. The birds roosting in the trees of Comaldika took flight in sudden primal and predatory fear. Then all were cut short. Lights came on in the homes surrounding the garden, and their inhabitants looked out from their porticos, holding staves to protect themselves. And it would have helped if the jackal they feared was any other than the god of the dead. Thus did Anubis become the first Egyptian god to meet the Melusai. But he was needed for his people and was not chosen. After many centuries, he could finally diminish the power Diana had tricked him into absorbing. But he never forgot, and never forgave her. And thus, the story is ended. The tale told, the chapter closed.